I just bought this. Depstech, is that? Depstech model DC12. Apparently it's new, but doesn't work. Yeah, bag, put the box away. Oh, nice Depstech. Got some little wheels. Not sure what that is. Some sort of dust protector, perhaps. Don't know which way that's supposed to go, like that, perhaps. Oh, this thing. I guess that goes on the end of there somewhere. We've got a box of well, bits, I suppose. What looks like it could be a tiny chuck, little spanner, but there's no charge cable, but apparently it doesn't work. Feels really quite heavy for what it is, and it looks, you know, really well made, but on, off, on, off. I'm assuming something's supposed to happen here. And put it to the on position, nothing happens. Got little buttons here. They're not doing anything. It just doesn't work. It says USB-C on the back here. So let's get this out of the way. Let's bring in my little USB-C charger. Plug that in there. See what we get with this plug in this time. Stupid little cover gets in the way, but that's pushed in as far as it goes. And on and off's doing nothing. Buttons doing nothing. And nothing. We're not pulling any current. Don't think it will matter if we turn the USB-C round, but we'll try it anyway. Push that in there. Nope. Absolutely nothing. It don't work. Right, well, when something doesn't work, we take it apart, don't we? So, oh, a bit tight. Oh, well, one came out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's our 6 screws out. Right, now let's have a look. Now, does this unscrew? Oh yeah, that unscrews as well. So that comes off. Now this looks like it's on 2 halves, so presumably we need to get that off as well. So get that off. Right, I can feel it's coming loose at this end. Now which end should we lift off? Which side? And does it matter? Oh, there's a label. That's what's holding us up. How do we get this sticky label off without doing any real damage? What about these? Will these grip it? Oh. Right, I think I can use my finger now, I've got it that far. I obviously don't want you to get into this without disturbing the label. I suppose I could cut it, but I don't want to. Oh, there we go. Off. Let's put that on. You might get a bang because I'm going to put this up next to the camera. Bonk. Right, now, do we lift it up this side or the other side? And does it matter? I just don't want lots of bits to fly out everywhere. Ah, that's it, that's much better. Right, oh well, that thing's fallen out. That's just the cover for the USB. Right, oh well, not a lot in them, is there? So we've got a fairly high powered motor. Not quite sure why that is that shape, but never mind. So then we've got nice ball bearing there. Motor. So that's how they get the power. I think it said it's 2.5 amp power. So that looks like there's 3 cells in there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that would give us our 12 volts then, wouldn't it? So they'd have to be 2.5 amps each. Right, now what does this... Oh, that's just pressing a little switch there. I can just see it. So does that lift out? Yeah, so we can lift that out. So all that does is slide that. There's a little micro switch there. Which is, can't tell if it's working or not, but obviously that's what that does. So that must be what turns it on. Yeah, and this is pressing on a button down there. Yep, that's pressing on a little mini button down there. And that looks like there's a display there. So that's presumably a display. And then we've got some additional circuit board here, which is not going to come out, I don't think. So maybe we need to lift all of this. Yeah, we've got to lift all this out. That's a pity, I didn't want to lift it all out, but it looks like we've got to. Because the Chinese seem to be able to squeeze all these things in small spaces, and I've noticed when I have to lift them out, I can't get them back in the same space. Never mind, we'll keep trying. Oh, come on, you can do it. Up. Ah, that's it. Yep, so that's a cover for the display. Oops, that's just fallen out, so that's our rocker switch. So presumably that will tell us the battery's charging. That's going to give us some sort of percentage, and I don't know, maybe speed. I can't tell if that switch is working or not. I think it's working. I think that's moving in. Like I say, these are not doing anything. Now, are those push on, or I think they're probably soldered on, aren't they? So that's interesting. So now I know what motor that is. So that says Lishi motor LS550. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if I can see anything obvious, because obviously we don't want to take this whole thing to bits if it turns out there's a wire hanging off somewhere. I can't see anything obvious. There's a connector there, and looks like they've heat shrunk the connector. I can't see where that's going. Oh, there's a black wire going to the battery. Oh, and a red wire going to the battery. So that must be acting as the charge board. It's going to be difficult to measure anything on the battery because they've got it all wrapped up. It's sealed in every direction. So it's very difficult to see. But there's a red wire going up there. Maybe that's part of the charge control, because that says B1, B2, B3. Yeah, I bet that is. Oh yeah, that says ground. So I bet that's all part of the charge control. That part. So those. Right, I'm going to find a bit of blue tack to try and stop this rolling about. Right, let's try testing some voltages. Now, there I've got ground and B1 and I get nothing, but I don't know if I need this switch pressed. But that's not doing anything. And if I go ground B2, I get nothing. And if I go ground B3, I get nothing. And if I try B1 to B2, I get nothing. B2, B3, nothing. I'm not getting any voltage anywhere. Let's try plugging the USB charger in again and see what happens. Right, at the moment I don't know what this means, but if I put that on there, and that on there, and I try to go to any of these pins, I get nothing. And if I try going between here and ground over there, I get nothing. If I plug the USB charger in, try and put this way you can still see it, and then if I go back on there to that first pin, I get 13.5 volts. But from where? This is still saying 4.95 and no current. If I go to the next pin, I get 13.3, and if I go to the next pin, I get 12.4, and if I go over to here to the ground, get 13.5. So with the USB charger plugged in, I've got voltage up here, but if I disconnect it, I haven't got voltage. But according to this is not doing anything, so I'm not putting any power in, so I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Right, I'm going to try my extra spiky probes. It's not easy to get that in shot, but I think you'll see that it changes if it changes. I think I can just get onto the metal going to the motor, and you might be able to see that's reading 0. So no voltage, and if I press the switch, nothing. So it looks like we don't have any choice. It looks like we're going to have to remove this battery to find out if there's any power coming from this battery or not, because so far it would appear there is no battery power. Right, we'll start here, so let's try and get this circuit board. That's looks like B+. So that's B+ off. I assume this is minus, that they're calling ground. And next to it is motor, so we might as well do both of those. Alright, so that's motor. one next to it says ground. That's off. And then the battery is still connected here. Right, so that should be negative on the battery, and that should be positive on the battery, and we've got nothing. The battery, well, I'll say nothing, 0.02 volts. I don't want to cut into the battery unless I absolutely have to, so I'm going to see if I can disconnect up here. Be fantastic if this is a push-on connector, but I suspect it's soldered on. Yeah, looks like it is. Yeah, that's a pity. I was hoping that we could just pull that off. Never mind. Right. That can come off, so we don't need that. That can go on there. I'm sure the motor's probably working fine, but we'll check the motor in a minute. But we need to work out something to do with this battery next. Right. That's some sort of temperature sensor for the battery, so that can come off. Why is that covered in solder? That's never a good sign. Right, so we'll get that off. And then this looks like it could be undone there. I've heat shrink that as well, which is I suppose made sense to somebody. It'll certainly stop it coming apart easy, would it? It won't fall apart too easy, that's for sure. Right. Now, of course, this might explain why the USB-C charger's not working, because if the electronics in here thinks the battery is completely flat, which it appears to be, it's not going to want to charge it. Right, let's double check this again now we've got it apart. So that can go over there, still got that there. So let's see what this thing says now, just to make sure, but I can't see it's going to make any difference. Nope, so there's our 0.02 again. So we need to find out, can we charge this, and what's any of this doing, and does the motor work? I'm going to cheat, I'm not going to show you this. I'm going to connect a power supply to this with no control whatsoever and give it a little bit of charge. I will keep watching it while I'm doing that to make sure, and I will check that it doesn't get warm. Right, I've used my power supply for about 5 minutes. It's starting to get a little bit warm, but you can see that it's got it up to about 9.6 volts. It's falling off a little bit, but a charger, a proper charger, not my power supply, might charge this up now. So I need to set this up on a proper 12 volt lithium ion charger and see if I can charge it. Now obviously I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I connect this, will it charge, because when I connect it, and I did just now, and so if I put that on there, it's not going to charge with just those two wires, because they're just the ones that it's testing with. So where else do I need connected? Does this need to be connected onto here? I mean, I should imagine it does. So then we would have battery there. Well, let's try and do it on this side where we can see what we're doing. If I hold that on there, but I don't know if I can get the, no, I can't get the ground to reach across. Let's go that way. So that's the ground pushed onto there, and then that's battery. Now of course we could be charging. Oh! and that says we are. It's come to life. Oh my good lord. It's saying 0% and charging. Well, I'll be blowed. Right, let's try soldering these connections back on. Right, according to that, it's charging. So I guess we leave it and wait and see what happens. Right, so there you have about 45 minutes and we've reached 10%, so it looks like it's going to take all day to charge it up. It's about 2 hours now and we've finally reached 20%. Right, it's taken 8 hours but it's finally reached 100%, so presumably the battery is fully charged. I'm trying to solder the wires back onto the motor. This funny little bit of plastic. I'm trying to hold some heat shrink back, because if the heat shrink gets too close it's just going to close up on itself before I want it to. So this is quite a delicate operation to get this to solder onto here and not affect the heat shrink. Right, I think that's gone on okay. I'm going to leave it to cool down a bit, but you see what's going to happen is the heat will travel along the wires, warm the wires up and start to suck the heat shrink down before I can move it along and put it where it needs to be. And obviously I don't want that to happen. Right, I've moved the heat shrink along a bit, so with a bit of luck now we can get it to shrink down and be where we want it to be. Hopefully that will do. And now we're just left with this wire which went in there to minus. Right, this is the motor minus connection going on. I just need to make sure that it's pushed firmly in because it keeps trying to slide down. I think that's it. Right, now in theory this should switch it on, but I don't know if this motor will start up if we switch it on. So I'll hold on tight to that and then let's just move that and see what happens. Nothing would appear to me. So it doesn't look as if anything happens. This is now reading 53, which I assume to be... Well, actually no, it's probably not. I don't know which way round that's reading. Which way are we supposed to read that? I don't know what number that's supposed to be telling me now. I was looking at it this way and it read 53, but then it would be upside down. Oh, well, it's reading something, but something is completely haywire with this, because if you look, if I go there to ground and there to 0.1, we've got a battery reading of 3.77, and if we go to there we've got a battery reading of 7.84, so basically 4 volts and 8 volts, so a little bit low, but we can live with that, 7.84. So when we get to here we should have 12, and we've got 9.6, which means that if we measure between, let's say, like here and here, like I said, we get 3.77, and if we measure between here and here, that should give us our second battery. It's a job to get a good connection, but that one's 4.06, and this one should give us our third battery, 1.76. So 2 of our batteries here are okay, more or less. One of them is no good. And yet when this was on the charger, it said 100% charged. So I think the whole reason for this not working at all now, it's not doing anything, is probably because as far as this is concerned, it's flat. So it's obviously not putting out 12 volts, so therefore it's not going to work. Right, that's the circuit board unsoldered from the battery. The battery is still connected to the motor via this positive line. I don't really want to undo that one at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the motor attached at the moment and have a look. I'll have to cut the heat shrink so that I can look inside here. There's nothing I can do about that. I hate cutting inside here because you never know if you're going to hit something you don't want to hit. There's wires. There's a wire there. There's a wire here. There's wires there. Whichever angle I go in at, I run the risk of hitting a wire. Let's have a look. Any wires under there? Oh, it's just way too tight. I hate it when it's like this. Because you just can't see what you're cutting into. Can I poke that? Oh, I can go a little way underneath there with that, so let's get a knife. Let's see if we can cut this along here without hitting anything. Because I did this once before a long while ago, and I went gaily along with a knife thinking I wouldn't touch anything, and I did. I accidentally joined something underneath, and of course lithium ion batteries can produce quite a shock in terms of spark. Alright, so I don't know if there's a circuit board or anything under there that I'm going to accidentally cut into, so I don't want to do that. It's quite tough plastic. I think we're nearly there. Can we get under there without hitting anything? Right, looks like we've done it. Right, battery is removed. It was saying 100% charged yesterday, but if you look now, if I go all three cells, I've got that same 9.74. It's a job to work out how to connect to which cell. Right, that's on that one, but I don't know if I can get to the other end of... That's there, but where's the other end? So that's all of them again. What's that one connected to? So that must be across two of them. What have we got here? We've got here. That's one of them. So we just need whichever is this last cell. I wonder if it's this last cell here, which is the one that's causing us a problem. It's... get to there. No, so it's not that one, because that's 3.77, so that's not the one, so that's okay. So there's stuff stuck on well at the end here, I'll give them that. Right, so that's there. Where's that? Let's see that one. There it is. 1.89. So that cell seems to be no good. Right, I've exposed these a bit more clearly. You can see the debris there. This seems to be the dud cell, so I should be able to peel this off. Right, there's our plus. It's a bit damaged, we might have to do something about that. And then, oh, there we go, so that's now loosened up, so we just need to get that off of this end. Now I could rebuild the entire pack with 3 new cells, but 2 of them do seem to be okay, so I'm going to try to replace just this one and see what happens. If that proves not to be a good idea, well, we'll worry about it then. Let's see if we can pull this off. But you can see it's fairly tight there. The great pity about this is that my spot welder for 18650s is so rubbish that it probably can't spot weld that back, because you wouldn't think that that would be thicker than it can manage, but it would seem that anything other than a hair and it can't spot weld it. Right, funnily enough, this is a brand new LG 2.5 amp hour battery, just like these. Almost the same colour. So we can try that. Right, I don't have much hope for this spot welder working on this, because like I say, it's pretty poor, but we'll give it a try. Well, it does seem to have worked. That's a minor miracle. That seems to have gone on. Right, so that can go around there. So we need this on here somewhere, and I can't remember where it went. Ouch, I've just shut my finger in the pliers for all those of you who didn't see that. Which is why I said ouch. Alright, let's trim some of that mess off the end. Alright, and that there. Right, insulator on. And that reach to there. So I have that there. It's going to one spot now instead of 2. Oh, 1 again. Oh, did 2 that time, but is that stuck on? Yeah, that seems to be stuck on. Right, we can push that down a bit tidier against there, so that can go against there. And then we just need to make this, which is still a little bit sticky, stick back on. So that can go back on there. I think it's still got enough stickiness to hold it. So that's on there. And then we just need to do the same at this end. I've got all these odd little bits I pulled off earlier, so they're all stuck there. Let's get that off. Alright, so that on there like that. They're not particularly well stuck at the moment, but I think they will stick better as they warm up a little bit. Right, so this needs a little bit of that just tucked into there so it can't touch anything, so that can go in there. I think this one must have had a similar thing under it at this end, so we'll just put that back up there, and that can go there. We've got one there. That seems to be it. I've got one left over. I don't know where I got that one from. I can't remember. Oh well. We'll worry about that in a minute. But that seems to be holding all of that together. So we've got more or less 12 volts now. So we've got almost full voltage now. So we should be in business in terms of voltage. I haven't got any heat shrink this sort of size, and it's got all the writing on it for the specifications, so basically after an epic battle with a reel of sellotape I've more or less stuck it back together again. So I think dimensionally it's still going to fit everywhere, so we shouldn't have a problem. My biggest problem is going to be trying to work out how this all connected up, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right, it looks like I've been misreading this. I thought that said something like 53, but it's supposed to be this way up. And it says E5, I think, but nothing is working. If I press the what is presumably the on-off switch, nothing happens. If I press these buttons here, nothing happens. And if I plug the charger in, sometimes it flashes and tries to charge, and then it just goes back to this again. So I seem to be worse off than when I started, and I can't get this to stop being there, so all I can do is unsolder the battery in order to get this to turn off. I bought myself a new meter that has actually got a beeper on it for continuity, so might be able to hear that, it just beeps. I'm just looking at the switch on here, and that outside there to that outside there, they appear to be connected, and if I hold them so they're connected and press the switch, they stop being connected. That's presumably what the switch is supposed to do. If I connect this to the middle one, nothing happens, but if I press the switch, so pressing the switch connects that one to the middle one, and if I go the middle one to this side, nothing happens. I never get a connection. So these two would appear to be the on-off, but the switch seems to be working okay. Use this middle pin. I'll put minus on there and I'll go onto that leg. It just doesn't want to settle. There we go. So I get 5.3 kiloohms apparently, and if I go to this leg on this side instead, I get 5.3 kiloohms. If I try and do the opposite test and I put plus on there, the meter doesn't seem to want to know. It's all over the place. So I'm assuming that's just off the scale, no connection. And if I go to this one, same thing again. So I'm assuming that there are two diodes in there and that those two diodes are working. Now next to it I've got this, which looks like a MOSFET of some sort. Again, I'll have to look up what the number is. But if I go from this leg to the middle pin, again it seems to be hunting around. Oh, it's found something. Is that 12 ohms? 13 ohms? Now if I go to this pin, I've got the same. And if I put a plus there and I go to this one, I've got the same, and if I go to this one, more or less the same. Now I'm not quite sure what that means, so if I put this on to the continuity with the buzzer, if we go there to there, it's saying we've got continuity, and if we go there to there, it's saying we've got continuity. And if I swap these round, it's saying we've got continuity, and if I go to that one, it's saying we've got continuity. So I appear to have a short from here to here and here to here, and it doesn't matter which way round the probes are. If this is some kind of MOSFET, you'd expect at least one diode in there to give us one of these legs would be different to the other leg. At least that's what I think normally happens. So I'm wondering if this is faulty. I'll have to look it up and see what the datasheet says about it. Right, I've been doing some searching on the internet. As far as I can make out, this is a TM1650, which apparently is a display driver chip. So this seems to be responsible for driving that display. So that's presumably, if this doesn't work, which it does partly, means that this is working, hopefully. And I've established that the switch here seems to be working, so that seems to be working. I think these are working. On this side, we've got an incredibly complicated chip here, which appears to be, I'm not even sure what the right number is. I've got HC895003A, 2335Z1, and then CA5284961. But as far as I can make out, this is some kind of microcontroller, and so it's possible that it's involved in the battery charging or the power output or something. I don't really know, but that's beyond my comprehension, that one. And then over here we've got a resistor, a very low value resistor, R010, which apparently is 0.01 ohms, probably a current sensing resistor. And then here we've got YFW, but then it says MBR2045DC, and that appears to be a double Schottky diode. So in other words, you've got a diode this side to the centre pin and a diode this side to the centre pin. So from here to here should read as a diode in one way, and then if you try and read it back the other way, it should stop reading as a diode. And then here to here it should read as a diode, and then if you read from here to here in the opposite direction, it won't read as a diode. And that appears to be what happens. I appear to get a reading this way, and then if I swap the probes round, the meter doesn't want to give me a reading. So I presume that is because it's effectively treating it as open circuit. So it would appear that this is indeed a double diode, and that both of those diodes are working fine. So I think this is okay. Which brings us on to this thing, or this one here, which seems to be an NCE 3095K. Now, according to what I found on the internet, we've got gate, source and drain, and then that's also the drain. So these two are joined together, which we did establish, they were joined together. Now between the drain and the source there is a diode apparently. So between here and here, if we have the probes one way round, we should read as a diode, and then if we turn the probes the other way round, it should read more or less as an open circuit. But in fact, between here and here, I get a short, and if I turn the probes round, I've still got a short. And if I do between here and here, I appear to have a short. And if I turn the probes round, I appear to have a short. But what should be happening between here and in here is not at all obvious because of the way this is connected. Whereas on this side, we know that this should be a clear connection, apparently through a diode. So this side is definitely not doing what it's supposed to do. And on top of which, I can't see any reason why we should find a short between here to here, or here to here. But I seem to have a short circuit across all of these terminals, all of which suggests that this is not doing its job properly. So I think the only thing I can do is try to order one of these, take this one off, and see if we can replace it. If it turns out that this is somehow involved in all of this, then I'm never going to fix it, because I've only got to look at how small that is to know that is well beyond any possibility I've got of fixing it. But this resistor seems fine, this seems fine, this may be a bit dodgy, so that looks like something I might be able to replace. Right, it might be an idea to try and do this with the hot air gun, but I'm a bit worried that these tiny components nearby might get the heat as well, so I'm going to try and get a soldering iron onto here. I'm also going to try and add some leaded solder first, because this unleaded solder is horrible to try and melt. So I'm going to try and get a bit of leaded solder on there. There's a blob on there. That's a blob on there. Then we'll try and get some on the back here as well. Alright, I've changed my angle of approach. I don't know if that's going to help. Let's see if I can... This does not want to move. I guess it just means that the heat sink is so good it's sucking the heat away from the soldering iron, and oh, there it goes. I can definitely see the solder has melted. That's it, that's lifted up. Right, so we should be able to turn that round now and get to the other side. Let's see if we can just get hold of that. Yes, that's still taking a bit of doing to get it to melt. There we go. We're off. So there we go. So we want one of those. Right, it's been 2 weeks roughly. I've managed to get some MOSFETs. It was as cheap to get 10 from China as it was to buy one in the UK, so 10 it is. Don't know what I'll do with the spares, but you never know. Might find a use for them one day. So we need one of these out of here. So that has got to fit there. Let's get that. Like that. And we'll try to get that on there in the right spot. Well, we somehow need to get some heat into this. I think this is acting a bit like a heat sink, because you can see the soldering iron is on there and it's not melting anything. Oh, there it goes. So if I can get that to there roughly, keep that there, press that down there. Right, I think I can see liquid solder underneath there. You'd probably see better than I can. Right, and now we just need to Make sure that we've got a good solder connection here. That looks okay, and now we need a good solder connection here. And that looks okay. Well, unfortunately it's exactly the same as it was before. It looks like it's displaying E5. If I press the switch, nothing happens. If I press any of the buttons, nothing happens. If I plug it into the charger, this flips and becomes 100%, and then the 100% goes out and it goes back to E5. And I can't get rid of that. I can't turn it off. It's just stuck on, assuming that that does say E5. I can't get rid of that. It would appear the only way I can switch the display off is going to be to disconnect the wire, because it doesn't work. I don't know what happened to this. It's plugged into the USB charger. It's turned on. If I measure here, I think that's the positive point, and there, 13.4, call it 13.5 volts, it's close enough. Oh, there we go, 13.5. If I go to there, again 13.5, and if I go to that one, for some reason it's basically 13, so I don't know why that one's different compared to these two. But this obviously boosts the 5 volts coming in to 13.5 volts ish, which is enough to charge the battery. But all of this, everything has stopped working. None of the buttons work, this doesn't work, the motor won't turn on. And if I try to go to ground there and onto battery output here, I've got nothing. Now that could be that it's supposed to do that, because it could be that it should be measuring the battery voltage, and of course the battery's not connected. But I don't quite understand it, because you'd think that this would be inputting across and trying to charge it up, so that I don't quite understand. If I leave that on the ground and I come to the terminal which they call B2, which is probably the end of the first battery, and I put it on there, I get 1.5 volts, but you would expect that to be 4.2 volts. And if I put it on this one, which would be the end of the second battery, so you'd be expecting 8.4 volts, I get not a lot. This is a simple answer. Let's try and get a good... Oh, there we go. So 1.3, 1, I don't understand that at all. So I don't really know what happened to this board. I replaced that, and within a few seconds I thought I heard a click or a flash, and then the chip seemed to have a crack in it. So I replaced it again, but it's just dead since I've replaced it again, so everything is dead. So it looks like this is just junk, but this seems to be working, so it looks like I can still use this as the charger. I need some way of replacing this, or I just use the tool on full speed all the time and put a switch in it. Right, no real progress, because I can't fathom out what the hell is going on with this circuit board. I'm just having a little experiment to see if I can get this to work from a switch. So I've got an old micro switch that I've made a lever for, and I'm just going to solder on these two terminals, so they, when this is closed, will join Right, now I've made a little bracket for this. It's a tiny little bracket, you can barely see it. It's just there, and the switch, it's like a right angle, and the switch is screwed to the bracket, and there's a slot down there where the circuit board fitted, there's our switch that fitted in there, and when it's there it's on and it should work, and then when it's out there it shouldn't. So that should be off, on, off, on, which means that if we have these two connected together, that switch should work. Right, I've just temporarily soldered those two together. They obviously can't stay like that. If I hang on to this and I hang on to the battery, you won't be able to see this because my hand's going to be in the way, but probably hear it. But if it works, but obviously what we haven't got is any control over speed. So we're either on or we're off. Right, I'm going to unsolder this wire from the positive terminal and put the wire straight from the battery onto there. So that's done away with that bit of wire. I won't bother with any heat shrink at the moment. That gets us to there. So in theory, now all we've got to do is find out will the case fit. Right, I'm not going to say that this is finished. It's like one alternative of finished, I suppose you could call it, because there's no charging system at the moment, so we've just got a hole in the back. But it does work. But of course it did have this fancy display, a thing that showed you the state of charge, and you could increase and decrease the speed. So all we've got now is 100%. Right, I found this. It's an old female jack. I can use it for charging, if you imagine that sort of thing. Plug in there, so I can use that as my charging jack. And when I look at this, that is almost the right size. It's so close that I think it would probably press on. The only thing is that this bit here is narrower, but that looks like it would almost go in, especially if I was to round the corners. So I'm going to try modifying that a fraction. I might try modifying it on this one, because this has got no bits and bobs in it, so I can hold this and cut into there, but it certainly looks like it could fit in there. Right, there's the charge female bayonet. It's glued in a little bit with some super glue. I'm going to have to try and find a way of supporting it from the inside. It needs to be fixed to this half because everything is going to go into that half, so that this half will just go on and be screwed on. So I don't want it fixed to the second half, I want it fixed to this half. And then that brings us to the battery. Right, here's our 3S BMS. That's our minus from the battery. That's our 12 volts out from the battery. That goes on there. This goes on here. This is for the first set of batteries, which is one battery, so that's 4 volts. So that goes on there. And this one has come all the way from the other end, which is for 2 batteries, which is 8 volts. So that goes on there. And then these are our outputs. So that's where we get our 12.6 volt output to drive the motor. And also we've got 2 little charge wires attached at the same point, and those will go to the plug that's here so that we can charge the battery up. Right, so first thing we need to do is get this thing soldered onto here. And elastic in it, and it keeps trying to bend away from me. Right, so there's our null. There's our 4 volts. There's our 8 volts. We need those two so that we can do balance charging. There's our 12 volts from the battery. So that's our 12 volts. And then we've got, this is our minus, so that's our output. Pass that down as best I can, so that's our minus output, or our negative output. And then this one, I've just got a blob of solder on it, is our positive output. Could have done with them making the contact points a little bit bigger and a little bit further apart, but never mind. Right, now if that's all correct, we should be able to bring our multimeter in. This is our ground. I haven't got a good place to put the ground. Let's take that off. So there's our ground. So there we should have 4 volts. And we've got 4.12. There we should have our 8 volts. We've got 8.22. Here we should have 12. Oh, and we've got 12.45. And then these are our outputs. So obviously the output should be the same 12.45, which it is. So it looks like this is good to go. I'm soldering in the switch connections. I'm switching the ground, just like the original did. And unfortunately, when I've got the soldering iron on me in the way, I can't actually see what I'm soldering. Well, I think that's on. Right, and it might not be obvious, but right down the bottom there is the positive connection to the motor. I put that on, but I didn't film it. That's now there, so in theory, I'm soldering on the charge wires, so that's the plus. Right, I find the best way to test one of these is to just give it something to do that's not easy. So I've got a little grinding wheel on there, a horribly rusty bit of metal. No fake rust here. This is the real thing. I don't think it matters how good the job it did. What matters is it did it. So, works well.